Perhaps the most basic expectation of any actor is for them to maintain character throughout a project, to leave the audience totally immersed and convinced by their performance. Obviously, mistakes happen and actors blow takes all the time, but generally, character breaks are caught by the production crew and discarded during production. As was the case with these 10 examples though, that doesn't always happen. I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and here are 10 times actors broke character in TV shows. Number 10. John Krasinski, The Office. Given the loose, faux doc shooting style of The Office, combined with the cast tendency to improvise, it's genuinely surprising that the show isn't absolutely littered with cast members breaking character left, right, and center. And yet, a most hilariously blatant break did make it to air in the Season 3 episode Women's Appreciation, when Michael accuses Toby of being the person who flashed Phyllis in the parking lot. Michael eventually shouts at Toby, saying, "Let's see your penis," prompting an awkward silence throughout the office as Michael's employees look on in stunned horror. But if you take a close look at Jim throughout the exchange, you'll see that he's actually covering his mouth with his hand. The reason for this is that John Krasinski actually couldn't stop himself from laughing, and so buried his mouth in his hand in an attempt to hide it from the camera. Keep your eyes on him when Michael keeps talking though, and you can see him visibly laughing despite the scene calling for all of the office workers to be dead serious. Number 9. Jared Padalecki, Supernatural. It's clear that Supernatural stars Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki had an absolute blast making the series, but in Season 3's episode Bad Day at Black Rock, that fun ended up spilling a little eagerly into the show itself. By the way, the actual movie Bad Day at Black Rock, really good. Spencer Tracy, go watch it if you haven't already. The episode ends with Bella, Lauren Cohen, stealing a pair of lucky lottery tickets from Dean, prompting a justifiably pissed off Dean to shout, "Son of a bitch!" Look closely at Padalecki during the shot though, and you can see him progressively losing his composure before cracking a wry smile. More to the point, in a vain attempt to avoid his smirk being caught on camera, he suddenly turns his head to the right. According to Padalecki himself, Ackles' shout was totally improvised on the spur of the moment, in turn catching his co-star off guard. And so, in an attempt to avoid blowing the shot entirely, he turned his head away from the camera while promptly laughing his ass off. Supernatural fans, being as famously committed as they are though, picked up on it almost immediately. Number 8. RJ Mitt, Breaking Bad. Here's a sneaky one in only the 5th ever episode of Breaking Bad, titled Grey Matter. When Walt's wife, Skylar, holds an intervention to try and convince Walt to undergo cancer treatment, keep your eye on Walt Jr. on the couch. As Walt enters the room, Hank, played by Dean Norris, opens up a platter of food and takes a bite. A moment that's meant to be mildly amusing to the audience, but not to Walt's family. All the same, RG Mitt's Walt Jr. can be seen laughing in the background, while pulling a John Krasinski and trying to cover his big grin by placing a hand over his face. Though you can generously argue that Walt Jr. laughing at his uncle's ill-timed snacking wasn't completely out of step for him as a character, given that he spends the rest of the scene totally stone-faced, it was clearly a case of Mitt being unable to stifle a genuine, honest-to-God laugh. Number 7. Phil Dunster, Ted Lasso. In Ted Lasso's Season 3 episode, I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea, Roy, played by Brett Goldstein, is even more angry than usual due to his recent breakup with Keeley, played by Juno Temple, and flips his lid when reporter Trent Krim, James Lance, visits the locker room to get material for his book on AFC Richmond. Roy shouts at his teammates, imploring them not to speak to Krim before storming out of the locker room. But keep your eyes fixed on Phil Dunster's Jamie throughout the scene, and you'll see him failing to keep a straight face, unlike his co-stars. Phil Dunster can be seen creasing up throughout the rant, no matter that Roy's tirade is supposed to have struck fear into the hearts of the entire locker room. Note the serious faces of everyone else in the scene except Dunster, who evidently could not stop himself from letting out a beaming smile at all the acted aggression. Number 6. Patton Oswalt, the King of Queens. Okay, so here's a really fun one, because Patton Oswalt didn't break character on sitcom King of Queens by merely laughing out a turn. He straight up decided to stop acting altogether. Yeah, in the opening scene of Season 8's emotional roller coaster, note that Oswalt's character, Spence Olchin, doesn't do anything. Like, at all. While Kevin James, Leah Remini, and company are chatting in the foreground, Oswalt is not only standing completely still, he's literally frozen like a statue, not reacting to the scene in any way. Like he's almost reliving a patrol along the Mekong Delta back in 1968. In a 2022 interview with Howard Stern, Oswalt revealed that, because he didn't have any lines in the scene, the show's writers dared him to stand still and remain immobile throughout, to see if audience members would notice. Given that the character-breaking prank was scarcely talked about until years after the 2006 episode aired, it's safe to say that he got away scot-free. Number 5. Sarah Snook, Succession. Succession wasted no time at all with actors breaking character, given that in its very first episode we have Shiv, Sarah Snook, fleetingly revealing a genuine reaction from the actress underneath. When Shiv meets up with Roman, played by Kieran Culkin, and gives him a hug, she says of his cologne, quote, "What is that, date rape by Calvin Klein?" Roman swiftly retorts with, "Yeah, you wish." A savagely unexpected one-liner which appeared to rattle even actress Snook herself, as for a brief moment, she stares directly into the camera lens in a confused manner. While there's no indication that Kieran Culkin's line was ad-libbed, it nevertheless threw Snook off for just one moment, causing her to break character before she slipped back in with the line, "You wish?" And so, for just a second, Succession felt like a genuine mockumentary, like an episode of The Office. It's one of those blink and you'll miss it ones though, as Snook recovered rather well. Number 4. Nathan Fielder, Nathan for You. The entire point of Nathan Fielder's amazing parody reality show Nathan for You is that Fielder keeps a straight face throughout, mining deadpan humor out of the ridiculous schemes he comes up with to quote-unquote help struggling businesses. But even Fielder, who has impressively blurred the lines between fiction and reality across his various shows, has his limits, and he categorically reached them in just the show's 4th episode. While speaking to the owner of a gas station, the subject of drinking someone's pee suddenly comes up, at which point the gas station owner reveals that he drinks his grandson's pee whenever he gets scared. Fielder is initially left agape at this revelation, though as the man goes into greater detail about his gross superstition, Fielder allows his mask to slip, letting out a quick laugh which made it into the final cut. Fielder returns to his typical po-faced expression immediately afterwards, but for a brief moment there, we saw a glimpse of the real Nathan being caught completely off guard. Number 3. Dominic Koi, The Sopranos. A subtle character break now, but a character break nonetheless. In The Sopranos' legendary 3rd season episode Pine Barrens, Tony, played by the legendary James Gandolfini, heads to Uncle Junior's house to pick up Bobby, played by Steve Schirripa, who emerges dressed up in hunting gear, which causes Tony to bust up into uproarious laughter. In an interview about the scene, Steve Schirripa revealed that James Gandolfini's fit of laughter was actually genuine, and a result of Schirripa walking into the kitchen while wearing a strap-on dildo, in an attempt to get an organically hysterical response from his co-star. And clearly, it worked. This scene is brilliant. What you might miss in the middle of all this, though, is a low-key character break from Dominic Koi, who of course plays Uncle Junior. Throughout the scene, Uncle Junior is supposed to completely no-sell the silliness of Bobby's hunting apparel, but during the mid-shots of Junior, you can just barely see Koi struggling to stop himself from laughing, the edges of his mouth clearly curling up. Oh man, what an episode. What an episode. Number 2. Matt LeBlanc, Friends. There are numerous instances of actors breaking character throughout Friends, but none more howlingly obvious than Matt LeBlanc totally losing his composure in the season 4 episode The One with the Worst Best Man Ever. At the end of the episode, Ross, David Schwimmer, confronts a stripper played by Lisa Rotondi, who he believes stole his dead grandmother's wedding ring. And when Chandler, obviously the late great Matthew Perry, says to Ross, "Way to be cool, man," Joey, LeBlanc, can be seen cowering behind them, desperately trying to mask his laughter with his mouth. If you're wondering how you never caught LeBlanc cracking up before, that's likely because this character break was cropped from the original 4:3 aspect ratio airing of the episode, and only became visible when the show was given a 16:9 widescreen remaster for streaming. Oh, for the love of baloney, I wish the streamers would stop doing these widescreen remasters, but at the very least, we do get this lovely little moment featuring LeBlanc. And number 1, Michael Mando, Better Call Saul. And finally, we come to Better Call Saul, whose 4th ever episode hero features one of the most blatant character breaks in recent TV history. And yet, it flows well enough into the scene that director Colin Buxey kept it in anyway. After that show, Michael Mando is released from police custody. He confronts Bob Odenkirk's Jimmy and accuses him of ratting him out. As Jimmy begins talking back to him though, actor Michael Mando suddenly starts blatantly laughing, even turning his head to the camera to make it that much clearer, only regaining his composure after about 5 seconds of obvious grinning. Though it's never been confirmed, it seems likely that Mando turned his head to director Buxey to see if he was going to call cut, and yet he evidently didn't. You can see Mando nod slightly, probably because he's been instructed to keep the take going. Thankfully, it doesn't derail the exchange because it's not 100% inconsistent with Nacho's volatile character, but it is an odd flub that got left in the scene regardless.